Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Athletics for Life podcast with your hosts, CD Johnson and myself, Jeff Copes.
Hey, this is a show where we explore education-based athletics and the philosophies that entails. Basically, it's just learning lessons through sports. Our guests include former athletes, interesting people in the world of sports, and other coaches and administrators in how to build successful and meaningful programs. So, Jeff, do you mind starting our introduction for today's guest?
Yes, I will do that. So today we have a very special guest on our show. We have Jared Maisel. Jared is a certified athletic trainer and consultant. He had his own company, Good Practice, which is a sports medicine and athletic program support services.
Yeah, he's also worked at the Concordia International School in Shanghai, St. John's, Belgium, Waterloo International School, and he's currently the athletic trainer and sports teacher at the International School of Brussels.
Yeah, and we met Jared last year at the Globetrottin AD summer conference, where I followed his webinar, which was very interesting. And ever since that time, we've been waiting to have Jared on our podcast. So we're very honored that he's here today for the Athletics for Life podcast.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to asking him about the benefits of multi-sport participation and how it relates to injuries and training, and also like training tips for our athletes, practice structure tips for us and for our coaches. So that way we can get back on track whenever we're able to play team sports again after this COVID shutdown.
Okay, so we're going over to Jared. Enjoy the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the last time we saw was at the Globetrottin AD's conference. No, not the AD one, but the summer. Was it the summer or the spring one?
Yeah, it was the summer.
Summer, right? And I was like, we've got to get Jared on our podcast one day. And actually, it's a really good time for us actually because COVID hit hard here in Mongolia. The kids haven't had any sports for a long time, so we really want to learn when we get back with our kids how we can start safely. And you're the expert here, so we were very honored that you're here today, Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations on your work here, your initiatives on this project. You guys are. I watched some of your episodes already. You guys are really stepping your game up. It's really nice to see your work.
Yeah, it's been a work in progress. For anyone who hasn't, some of the first episodes, the sound quality and the video quality, and just the overall comfortableness with doing a podcast has definitely improved as we've continued. So
it's a craft. It's a craft.
It is. But we are very fortunate that we have an excellent editor in chief, Scott Lillis. He does all our editing and he makes it look good. It's not us. So
got to have the support staff.
Oh, you have to, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, to get started, can you just give us a little background information about kind of who you are, what you do, where you're at in the world?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jared Maisel. I'm an athletic trainer, a certified athletic trainer. And I was actually a little upset. Usually on these sorts of shows, I'm the first athletic trainer on the show. But I saw that you guys already had one. You had Brett from Strong
First. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So great for you guys. To have I'm a little me being competitive. I'm a little upset that I'm the second.
Well, now you know where the bar is at, so now you can prepare and.
Yeah. So as a certified athletic trainer, that is it's a specialized profession in sport related injury. And there's different routes to go off of that baseline of athletic training. Like Brett went into the strength and conditioning and performance side. I'm still on mainly the injury side on rehabilitation, evaluation, assessment of injuries, but then also kind of the administration and preparation side of making sure sports programs are doing the things that they need to do to be prepared in the event of an emergency or a concussion arises. So I worked in a variety of different settings. I worked in American college sports, professional, at multiple different levels. And then I first moved, and now in the international school setting, I first moved abroad in about 6 years ago. I got started in Shanghai, China.
Mhm.
I was at Concordia International School with my supervisor was one of your colleagues, Chris Bishop at the American School of The Hague.
Yeah.
So that's why I got my feet wet into the international school world, and loved it. Loved Shanghai. I was there for 4 years, and my wife and we've relocated to Brussels, Belgium, and we both work at the International School of Brussels. So this is my first year. So just getting started on seeing how we can improve things at our institution and in the region.
Okay, yeah, we don't have an athletic trainer here in the whole country, Jared. So it's great that you are here to share your expertise. What are some of the, not many international schools, or let's say some international schools have an athletic trainer and some don't. What are some of the ways that a school can persuade their admin to start a athletic training program or have a specific athletic trainer in their school?
Yeah, it is new. It is very much growing. When I first started in China, there was only maybe 6 or 8 athletic trainers in the region, and now it's their last check. There must be close to 50 in the East Asia region, in various settings. Not all in international schools, but it is in the area, in the region. It's growing. More and more in the international school sector as well. I'm fortunate here in this area, in our conference, our athletic conference, the ISSTs. We now have 3 athletic trainers out of about 13 schools. So it is growing. Athletic training is a multi-dimensional profession, and there's a lot of different areas that we can get involved with. Previously in Shanghai, I was the wellness coordinator of the faculty and staff. And in addition to my primary hat of handling, obviously, the high school sports injuries, that's priority number 1. But there are a lot of secondary duties that we can take over and get involved with and have a comprehensive benefit to the school. So in that setting, I was taking care of the faculty general health needs. I was helping them out with health promotion, nutrition, general guidance on being happy and healthy, and more. If they're happy and healthy, they're a more effective teacher. So,
right, yeah.
That was kind of my secondary duty there. And here at ISB, I'm teaching. So I have a teaching certificate as well. A lot of athletic trainers have their master's degrees in education. 80% of athletic trainers have a master's degree. So I'm teaching the BTEC sport program, which is, I don't know if CD, if you, at being a British school, if you have BTEC program.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. So BTEC is a very specific British curriculum. It's a very practical vocational program to try to get students ready for the sport, medical, health field, essentially. And so we're using it as a part of our career-related program in the IB. So I'm teaching and doing athletic training at ISB. So that's a couple examples of how schools can get an athletic trainer involved. I know other schools have them working in addition to their athletic training duties, strength and conditioning duties, PE teaching duties, health and safety, administrative type of work, health and safety officer.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different areas to have a benefit to the school.
Definitely. I think that's pretty common too. In international schools is just, you don't have the capacity to have, an athletic training department with, 4 or 5, ATs where, you get one and then, okay, what other hats can we put on him? What roles can he fill?
Exactly. And that's the same on the faculty side as well. I mean, how many teachers or support staff like yourself have to do more than just 1 or 2 things? You have to do, 5 different things on a given day.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure. I'm teaching chemistry, physics, year 7 math, PE, and doing all the AD stuff. So,
Yeah.
And a busy
Kind of a
podcast, CD. Don't forget that.
yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah. So one thing that we try to encourage is promoting like students to play multiple sports. And we don't see it as much here where students will just specialize in one sport. It does happen, but not as much as it did when I was coaching in the States. From an athletic training point of view, is that what kind of pros come from being a multi-sport athlete?
Yeah. That's what I was really interested to learn from you guys. Which are there any particular sports in that are the primary ones that kids gravitate towards? Is it like a basketball?
Sure. We have 3 core sports, and like just basically we have 3 sports, and that is volleyball in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then football in the spring. And I know it's been my kind of experience that generally there's a lot of crossover between volleyball and basketball, but then the football players are just football players, is what it tends to be. Now, I'm not sure if that's the same for Jeff, but that's just kind of what I've seen. Now, there are some individuals that break that mold that are just volleyball year round, all the time volleyball or basketball. But that's essentially kind of what trends I've noticed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I must say, Jared, in here for us, I think basketball is the main sport. If you look at it, also the Mongolians, it's a lot of wrestling, judo, boxing, like fighting-oriented sports, martial arts. Our kids, they tend a lot towards basketball. That's their thing. And of course, our programs are a bit smaller. Our schools are smaller, so we try to support multi-sport participation. But you see a lot of kids who focus on one sport specifically. So yeah, that's a bit about our background here.
Yeah, I would say that sounds about right across the board. Yeah, unfortunately, that the way our sports and society is working is that there is this cultural norm, that normalized behavior of, if you want to have a shot at all of being good at any one particular sport, you need to start training and specialize at that sport since the age of 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, that has become normalized in a lot of ways. I think it's changing. I think it's changing for the better over the last period of time. But it is still an issue, especially in some of the older school mentalities. And we know that it is not the case. There are many paths to being good or reaching your goal of playing university sports, playing professional sports. There's more than just one route of living, eating, breathing soccer or football or volleyball or whatever it may be. And actually on our end, on the injury side, we're seeing epidemic injury rates amongst those athletes that are specializing in sports, particularly in boys basketball. You may have seen, just as a viewer of basketball, lots of young up and coming stars just decimated with injuries, stress fractures leading to full blown fractures, chronic foot injury, fractures that aren't healing, shoulder instabilities, all sorts of issues. And then on the female side, generally that's girls soccer is the big one as well. But it can happen in any sport, and also in baseball in the US is a big one. The problem is that kids are growing up playing multiple teams at the same time year round. So there's just no break in their season. And then year after year, I've seen the results on my end working in college sports, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids coming in with multiple surgeries, multiple significant injuries, and they've been playing baseball, pitching for the last 10 years straight with no break.
Wow.
Is the cause of that mostly just repetitive, the same motions over and over and over and over again?
Yes, yeah, that is a key. That is a big component of it. The lack of recovery, lack of an off season, lack of general physical training in general, And then also a part of it is that this age group of 12 to 18 years old, we have to remember they're still growing, they're still developing, they're not physically mature yet. They still have open growth plates. They may have underlying muscle imbalances or tightnesses or weaknesses, whatever it may be. And because they're just playing football, or volleyball, there's no time to correct some of these issues. So everything gets compounded, basically. And so there's actually a lot of organizations out there, sports medicine organizations and general sports organizations, leagues that have come out against early sports specialization and promoting multi-sport participation. And one of those is the National Athletic Trainers Association of the US. And they've come out with a lot of literature and a lot of support materials and resources for that. And I just wrote it down, the top 6 points that they promote to programs is delay specializing as long as possible, one team at a time per season, organized sport in one particular sport less than 8 months out of the year, hours of week of training of whatever your year and age is. So if you're 12 years old, 12 hours of training a week. If you're 16, 16 hours of maximum 16
maximum,
hours. Maximum of training. 2 days off a week for rest, and a period of time every year of a complete rest from all sport. Not necessarily all sport. They can still physically train in general play, but organized sport.
Sure.
So, and this is all based on data on in looking at the injury statistics and what we can do to help mitigate that.
Yeah, I think for probably about 90% of our athletes, we're okay in that sense, in that we train 3 days a week, maybe an extra one on the weekends. And so that for the time, it's not too bad. But I would say that we have maybe a couple kids each year who are phenomenal in whatever sport. And then they're involved with a club team. They have games throughout the year. And I'm thinking a couple of football players that play, and they basically play year round. They go from football in the fall to futsal in the gym in the winter, back to football. Then they play football for the school team, in the spring as well. So even though it's not a major issue for most of our athletes, I'd say a lot of our athletes that could potentially go on to play at the next level that are that caliber might have some of these issues, just of overtraining.
That's in the international schools themselves. I think a lot of them are providing, an appropriate amount of exposure and training options for the kids. Here at ISB, we're probably on the upper end of opportunity for kids. And what I mean is like 4 practices a week plus usually a game day. So that's still generally well within the recommendations, well within that. The problem is that we can't always control what the kids are doing outside of our schools. And sometimes it's even unknown to the coaches that they're playing football with you during the season, but they're also playing football at club. And then I've had some kids that are even doing another sport at the same time, like doing like club track and field at the same time.
Wow.
So
exactly. Jared, so for someone who's really into one sport, and we have a few of those kids, right? Like very into basketball. Some of them, they play for Mongolia, actually. They play for under 19. What kind of activities should they do next to that? So maybe something that you can, share your expertise on that. What could they do?
Yeah, and one other point to kind of bring up from this about sport specialization in this age group that we didn't even talk about, and it's a big component that you guys, I don't know if you may have seen, is the psychosocial aspect as well. We want kids to be happy, healthy, and have a good relationship with sports. And we see for those that specialize, if they're lucky enough to not sustain, physical injuries or a minimal amount, the mental health repercussions that can occur. So this is, like I said, this is a young, developing age group, not only on the physical side, but also the social emotional side as well. So there has been some links between depression, anxiety, perfectionism, and then ultimately burnout from the sports. So I think it's good practice for all our sports organizations to try to have that healthy fitness for life type of component to the sport aspect. So what like Jeffrey, like you were asking, is having a big picture scope when it comes to basketball, baseball, whatever sport it may be, is that this is one component of being healthy.
Yeah.
That this is a supplementary option to being healthy and fit. So obviously, general physical training is going to be a big component of, like I said, some of this adolescent growing population, muscle imbalances, tightnesses, mobility issues. So proper, good foundational exercise options, and working with professionals are best available, what's best available to them as a resource, to make sure we iron out any of those mobility, core strength, whatever it may be, in the fitness center. And it doesn't need to be anything. It doesn't need to be anything high end and specialized that sometimes we think, oh, I'm a baseball player, I need to do a baseball program, I need to do a football program. No, in this age group, we can be just generally focused as an all-around athlete and fitness person in the gym by doing a variety of exercises, upper extremity, lower extremity. And lastly is also the mixing up the sports as well. So, but some people think that in order to be a really good basketball player, I just need to play basketball. But no, that's not the case. The more variety of movements and more problem solving that we throw at kids, the better all around athlete and better performer they're going to be. So I'll give a quick example, is that I can always kind of tell which athletes are volleyball specialists. I can always tell by the way they move. Well,
oh, really?
Not 100% effective, but pretty effective. They always really lack a really good first step to approach the ball on a dig or in a rally. They always seem to be on their heels, and they're not really multi-directionally mobile. So by introducing, instead of just saying play volleyball all the time from the age of 10 onwards, adding other sports to the mix, like tennis or football, soccer, that allows that multi-directional movement to occur and allows those neuromuscular connections to occur. That's going to have carryover effect on your performance in volleyball. And the same thing goes with upper extremity versus lower extremity. If you're a baseball pitcher, if you run track and increase your stride length, it's going to make you a better pitcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's carryover, right? Yeah.
I've noticed that just even, my background's wrestling, and so it's not even a ball sport, but then how many things translate to, just playing defense and being able to turn and react on basketball or football, whatever it is. Being able
to have that low center of gravity that I can properly box out by placing my forearm on your center of gravity and move you out of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's this two-time Olympian boxing champion, Lomachenko. Maybe you've heard of it. He was the pound-for-pound king for years. He lost a few months ago. Very unfortunate. But his dad put him on ballet and wrestling when he was a kid. next to his boxing training. Actually, he did boxing only 2 hours a week or something. He was doing ballet and sambo wrestling, and and that carried over in his footwork, his quickness, his movement. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, what better way to teach grace and and effortless movement than a sport activity like ballet or a yoga or Pilates or Tai Chi. Some of the best athletes out there are the most efficient movers. I'm thinking of like a Roger Federer. That the least amount of effort, the most bang for their buck that they can produce on the court or whatever it is, the more efficient and better athlete they're going to be.
Yeah, I heard there was a teacher. Sorry, Jeff. There was a teacher a few years ago. He was a dance teacher, and if you just saw him, he looked very frail. He's very long and limber. He was a great dancer, but he came in the mornings when I was lifting, and he had no experience lifting, and he just wanted to get stronger. And he was so strong and had such perfect, like impeccable form, having zero experience lifting. It was amazing because it was just, he had so much control over his body and his movements that, it just translated into the weight room.
I'll tell you from experience my example is from when I was working as a wellness coordinator in Shanghai, and I was working with just a faculty staff person. By far, the ones that could pick up movements the quickest were dancers. They had experience in any sort of dance, samba or Zumba. Zumba were excellent. And another one is gymnasts as well. They're very, what we would say in athletic training is very kinesthetically aware. They have very good proprioception, very good body awareness. They understand their body's positioning, and they can see a movement and replicate a movement very, very quickly.
Jared, so this is a question from me. Is very interesting is that we don't hear much because so many good athletes have played multiple sports. Patrick Mahomes, LeBron James, they all play multiple sports. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. And a few months ago, you saw Nikola Jokic, which was an amazing example from the Denver Nuggets, throwing a ball all over the court. And they said, well, he played water polo when he was a kid. Why don't we hear more? Why are our kids so focused on playing one sport? What is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's still the lack of education, the lack of awareness on that. Like I said, it's changing, especially with like the Patrick Mahomeses. And what a perfect example of the ability to go from baseball to American football. And you can see it in his arm slot angles. He can throw from any angle. And that's an example of the carryover from sport, like playing it like a second base or a shortstop, that you have to throw from multi angles, as opposed to a prototypical quarterback in the American football that is just the same motion every time. It's a more dynamic element to the game. So why? I think inherent to some sports, it's ingrained in the culture of the sport, like football, soccer. Those, for example, unfortunately, in the professional realm, Barcelona is signing kids at the age of 10 or 12 years old into their developmental program. So that unfortunately puts it in the kid's head at a young age that this is the route I need to go to get to where I want to be. And honestly, unfortunately, on the negative side of some sports, is that there are obviously that we need to talk about, or sometimes there's conflict of interests by the coach or by the sports organization that's pulling these kids, the club team that's trying to pull these kids in. There is a financial aspect to sports, and that's not to say that's a rampant thing. There are a majority of coaches have nothing but good intent for the kids' interests. However, there is a financial aspect. We need to, for some of these clubs, these spring leagues, these tournaments, they need to have kids there to compete and pay the entrance fees or to pay the membership fees. And so I think sometimes that sort of conflict of interest can play a role as well. But the best we can do to fully inform, that's why education-based athletics is so important, is that essentially just a neutral party that just wants kids to be plug in sports as a part of their overview of academics and education and life. I mean, your name says it, athletics for life. So having that fully informed educational piece and knowledge up front, I think is the only thing that's fair to these kids. And so, for example, if you have kids that are trying to play basketball in the US and get a college scholarship, only of all high school athletes in the US, only 3 to 4% go on to play college sports, roughly. And only 1% end up earning a college scholarship. So I think by fully informing kids up front on, okay, this may be where you want to go, but just to be fully aware, these are the chances to get there. And letting them make the option, take the choice, and trying to educate them on the balance between the sports, the physical activity, the sleeping, the eating, the schoolwork. And so an example that I sometimes give is that, yeah, it may have worked out for the Lionel Messis and the Cristiano Ronaldos, but how many tried to go that path and didn't make it? Yeah. I would say it's probably the Messis and the Ronaldos, they're probably 1 in a million, essentially. So do you want to have this path of possible physical and mental strain and possible detriment towards that? But like I said before, there's multiple paths to that. So also fully informing about those multiple paths, that you don't need to do eat, breathe, live football, for the next 10 years. There's other ways to get there. And there's other examples of people getting there. Unfortunately, the Messis and the Ronaldos just get the most spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few athletes that just keep popping into my mind throughout our conversation. You mentioned a while back just about they get kind of down. They're kind of struggle with mental issues, burnout. We had a phenomenal football player, and he played for the national team. He's a superstar. He was just amazing football player, and then he started playing basketball, which kind of goes back also to your point about the conflict of interest. His coaches didn't want him playing basketball because what if he got hurt doing something that's just kind of for fun? Like it's a school team. Yeah, we're going to try to win. We want to be competitive, but at the end of the day, it's just for fun to hang out with your friends and be a part of the school program. And, at first he struggled. He was good. He was a great athlete, but not a great basketball player. And then as he progressed to year 11, year 12, he was phenomenal. Just, that athleticism really shines on the basketball court. And he talked to me about how much he just really enjoyed basketball. And in that process, he did get injured playing football, and came back and was able to play basketball for us, but he kind of lost his passion for football. Just, he'd been doing it for so long. He didn't know why he was doing it anymore. And he kind of opened his eyes that, there's more to sport than just football. And so it kind of highlighted a bunch of things that you'd been just talking about all in one
example. It's the same thing on the academic side. Like if a kid's interested in chemistry, they may take a lot of chemistry, but they're also taking other subjects. And by the variety of subjects, it opens up those paths of this is for me, or even this is not for me. And finding that out at a young age is extremely important. That finding out the path that is for you is just as important as finding out the path that's not for you. So like in your example, once they were exposed to another aspect of physical activity in sport, it kind of questions their initial thought. So the more we can do in education and going on to university and being a student athlete, the more we can find out, guide student and athletes towards what's for me, what's not for me. That's kind of the goal, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Jared, so this is an interesting one. We had the COVID pandemic has been pretty tough here in Mongolia. We over 2 years we lost 3 seasons. So we've been locked since November now. So we lost the basketball, the mid-season, and now the spring season. We are not sure if it's going to open up very soon. What can our students do now, and what should we do as coaches and athletic directors to get back into practice next year when we start? What should we take into consideration? What can the kids do right now to get back into practice next year?
Yeah, it's gonna be a long road. We're still on that long road.
Right.
There's some light at the end of the tunnel, but we're just starting to see that light. But so one thing that I want to bring up is in this aspect is that there's a lot of unknowns with COVID-19, long-term possible health implications. I'm talking about post-infection, and we're seeing it in athletics. There have been long-term health conditions that have arisen from post-COVID infection, one of those being a cardiac issue called myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the tissue surrounding the heart. And obviously, since it is it's mainly a respiratory issue, obviously respiratory issues following infection. So, and we're seeing it in athletics is the problem with myocarditis is that it can cause emergency conditions like a full-blown cardiac arrest. So what we need to do in the sports, as the sports safety world, is making sure that kids are okay to participate first, to be honest. And I know it's a bit of a contentious area, especially in the international school industry, of pre-participation physicals. It depends on the jurisdiction that we're in, whether we're in Mongolia or Belgium or in the US, what the rules are regarding that, and also what your institutional policies are regarding that. But I feel, and all the major organizations out there, like the NFHS, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, a bunch of other sports medicine groups out there, are recommending pre-participation physicals for all student athletes. So regardless of what the policy is in everyone's jurisdiction, everyone this year in this upcoming sports season should see their doctor. That's the recommendations. So I think and that's something that we're navigating at ISB is how do we do this? And that's a big part of your athletic director jobs, is to get buy-in and to get consensus and to get support on any initiative you want to do. Yeah. And so we're looking into the logistics of strongly encouraging student athletes to see their doctor, to make sure that it should be a regular thing to begin with. It should be a semi-annual or annual thing to begin with. Like I said, these are kids that are developing physically, and allergies can develop, medical conditions can develop. 1% of the population of the people of general population have an unknown, undiagnosed heart condition that they're not even aware of. So this kind of just amplifies that need, or that urgency to that kids should be seeing their doctors fairly regularly to prevent a cardiac arrest or other condition from developing. So that's kind of at the forefront. Even if there wasn't a diagnosed positive test, we do know that asymptomatic infection occurs. So people could have been infected and not even been aware of it. And then now they may have this underlying condition going on. So I think any sort of gravitation towards that would definitely be a positive for the safety aspect for the institution and for the kids themselves. So that's one. See your doctor before you start sports. would be a good recommendation. The next thing would be have a very long-term view at getting back into sports and physical activity conceptually. These are kids, by the time they get back to the fall season or their winter season, their spring season, they may have been out from sports for almost 2 years at this point. So it is going to take at least that amount of time to get back to where they were beforehand. So it's not going to be, oh, we're back on the soccer pitch, we're back on the basketball court, we're going to do things as we always did it. One of the things that the athletic director here at ISB, when we got Lee Roski is my supervisor, one thing that we agreed on and he communicated to our coaches when we did get sports going in the fall for a little while was, kind of throw out your playbook. The way things you've done it historically, throw it out the window. And we need to keep kids on the court in any way that we can. So that comes down to practice planning and the way you run a practice and the way you conduct drills and what your selection is. We need to make sure that we have a very slow, progressive return to intensity and quantity and volume. So in our short seasons, I assume we have very short seasons in the international school world, only 8 to 12 weeks or so, somewhere around there.
Yep.
So in the event we do get to competitive seasons in the fall and the winter, need to have very good understanding that the kids are not going to get to where they typically get to in any particular season, and needing to be okay with that. And the goal is get kids on the court, get them physically active and moving, try to keep them injury free, and just focusing on the fundamentals of the sport. Basic, go back to basics. You may have a varsity team now, but maybe you should be treating them as a middle school or JV team as far as your selection of activities is concerned. So educating the coaches on this as well is a big component, that some of them may want to just go, because maybe that's what the kids want. Maybe that's what the parents want. But we need to be the intermediary to make things logical. So incorporating general play, multi-directional movement, focusing on endurance, corrective exercises, it would be a key thing to implement. And what I mean by corrective exercises is we need to keep in mind, a lot of these kids have been on Zoom for 4 or 5 hours a day, every day for the last year. So postural issues, core strength, hip mobility, hamstring mobility, all sorts of basics that need to get addressed. If we don't address them, there's no way they're going to be able to handle gassers and suicide sprints for a period of time. They're going to break down. They're going to break down after 2-3 practices. So, so back to basics.
Definitely. I want to swing back to the kind of pre-participatory physical, because that's something that we've been talking about here. Is that something that you do on a school basis? Just like, okay, we're just going to focus on our school, or like at a conference level? And then when you do that, I imagine it'll definitely depend on, jurisdiction and stuff. But like here we have school doctors. So we do have a doctor on staff. So as far as like the ease of implementing something like that, it does become, a little bit easier to just say, okay, you can see your doctor. So I'm just curious, I know you said you were still kind of figuring out the logistics and stuff, but kind of what have you seen or what have you done in the past as far as those exams go?
Yeah, it's the model in as a U.S. athletic trainer, that's kind of my background and my upbringing, my experience. So I always kind of view through that lens. It's very normal to have an on-site person to do that. You bring in a couple doctors and they just handle everyone's physicals right then and there over the course of a day or like a weekend or something like that. That's very common. Any approach to pre-participation physicals, it's going to have to be an institutional decision. So it's going to be very difficult to do something at a conference level, where you have multiple countries, multiple institutions that have different legalities to navigate. It's going to be very difficult to do. It would be great to do, but what here in Belgium in the ISSTs, what the way Frankfurt, the rules that Frankfurt, Germany has to cover versus The Hague in the Netherlands, are going to be apples and oranges.
Definitely.
So, but what we can do from a conference level is encourage all institutions to navigate what's best for that institution. So we can't do something, we probably can't do a blanket thing across the conference, but we can do encourage and mandate that from a conference level, each institution looks at what's best for their institution.
Sure.
There are additional hurdles to overcome, especially here in Europe. There's a lot of regulation around this, and including like GDPR, privacy concerns. So that's something that I'm looking at now. I look forward to telling you how it works out.
Please.
but what we're looking towards is encouraging and recommending our student athletes and families and our communities to see their family doctor. And we are looking into providing a sample form of things for the doctor to review with the patient. So for example, there's a lot of good resources out this. The one I took from was the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have a very standardized 3-page form, and at the end, the doctor signs off on the clearance. That's something that we're looking at right now. And then we have other barriers to overcome, like the language issue as well.
Same.
So the documents I'm looking at are English, being from North America. However, in Belgium, we're French, German, and Dutch speaking population. But we have populations from all over the world, from the Middle East, from South America. So that's another complication to look at. But yeah, and another method is simply by so I was talking about having a standardized form. A lot of clinics, a lot of doctors will have their own standardized form that this is how I do a physical. If as long as they get seen by their doctor and reviewed about various complications, including taking a look and listen at the heart, I'd be happy with that.
Sure.
So it's going to depend, and it's going to vary widely. For some of those institutions that have those on-site doctors, that is awesome. And I would definitely work with your health office staff to talk about this, and to any institution that's in that fortunate position to see, in their opinion, what does that look like? Have all our student athletes see you, our doctor? Is that something that's possible? Do we mandate it? Do we recommend it? Those are conversations with each institution's administration and leadership teams.
For sure.
Jared, we can talk for hours, so we should definitely do a follow-up on this one.
Yeah, let's see how these rollouts go or something.
Right. So for any of the, we're gonna wrap it up soon. We don't want to waste too much of your time on your early Sunday morning. What if some of our student athletes, maybe all over the world, and especially here in Mongolia, they're looking forward to the new season, to the new academic year. They're still home. What are some of the basic things that you would suggest for them to do? Is it kettlebell, stretching, yoga? What kind of activities would you tell them to do in order to be prepared?
On my end, the injury side, the sport-related injury, in this age group, I think the first thing they need to be doing is working on mobility, improving their range of motion. Get that first. We have kids that have been sitting at a desk 4 or 5 hours a day for the last year. Hamstring tightness, hip tightness, forward neck, rounded shoulders. I think that's honestly going to be very, everyone back.
Actually sit up.
Posture check.
I think small things like that may lead to bigger issues are going to be pervasive, I think. Mobility work, I think, would be, something is going to be better than nothing. So any sort of mobility work in whatever mode is best for the student athlete. So what I mean by that is I'm a big proponent of foam rolling and different myofascial release techniques, the massage sticks, all that sort of stuff. If it's best for them to learn at home how to use that equipment, acquire that equipment and use that, then absolutely go for it. That's going to be amazing. And in all our programs, that's something that may be worthwhile to consider as well, is, having those sorts. There we go, right there.
There we go. Well done, CD.
Mine's within reach.
Perfect. Perfect. So after this, you can hop on your hips. Right.
There's some dust on it, CD. You get the.
So I think the mobility is going to be key.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily need to come from just foam rolling, just from myofascial release. There are many, you mentioned yoga, a great way to work on mobility. Meanwhile, also working on core strength, some of those corrective exercises, those postural aspects as well. It's going to be whatever the kids have available to them at home. But everything should run through kind of someone to be a neutral party involved. So what I mean is that some kids are very fortunate. They may have like a home gym operation going on. They may have a whole setup in their garage. So for example, a kid returning to possible football or soccer, you don't want them doing box jumps all day, every day. So there should be some sort of buffer. And so our institutions could, whether it be their primary sport coach, their PE teacher, whoever it could be, just someone to filter out the nonsense would be really helpful. As we know, there's plenty of that around, and our kids tend to pick up home workouts on TikTok and stuff like that. So someone to be the voice of reason for the kids would be very helpful. And something's going to be better than nothing. It just depends on what the kid is. I think everyone should have some basic tools of foam rolling and myofascial release stuff at home.
Yeah, I've even just used the old rolling pin too.
Yeah.
Just same difference.
Back in my first when I was a student, before foam rolling was even really foam rolling, we just had a PVC pipe wrapped with a little bit of softening kind of foam gel thing, and that's what we used before foam rolling was even a thing.
Yeah.
Or even just this hard cricket ball, sit on for a while and
softball, lacrosse ball. The rolling pin. Maybe just clean it before mom or dad. Again.
Well, no, this has been a great interview, great talk, and like Jeff said, we could go on for hours, I think. Kind of any last tips for either athletes or ADs, anything that maybe you wanted to mention but you haven't got a chance to?
I think on the positive side of things, on the silver lining of current COVID circumstances, I think now is a good opportunity for a reset, for anything that's been on the athletic director's dream list, the down the road lists, the ultimate, we would like to do this, but there's never enough time. I think there's a real opportunity for that. That if you really want to promote, possibly taking a little bit of practice time to devote to some of this more physical preparation and training aspect, these generalized strength and conditioning aspect, I think now would be a great time. Is that, hey, coaches, we're going to gravitate towards this a little bit more, or kids, our student athletes, we want to be more, we want to have this more focus, whatever it may be, or I'm speaking specifically on this physical training side, but any sort of program you want to implement. If you've always dreamt of implementing FMS, functional movement screenings, maybe now's a really good time to invest in a couple pieces of equipment to look at that sort of thing. Whether it's be even off the ball things like more education as far as how do you become a student athlete in university, or what does progressing towards professional sports look like from someone in your international student athlete perspective. So I think it's a good opportunity to what we've always kind of dreamt about, that it would be nice to do. Let's see if we can do some of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jared. That's some amazing tips, and I want to invite you again in a few months to talk a bit more about the coaching side of it and how to set up a good practice. So that might be great for our coaches by the time we are going to start again. So we'd like to have you back on in a few months' time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for your work on this. Any avenue I can be assistance to on the sports safety side in the international school world, always happy to help out.
Thank you so
definitely.
much.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks so much, Jared, for being here today.
Have a great day in Mongolia, guys.
Have a good day in Belgium. See you, Jared.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
And that was our interview with Jared, athletic trainer. A lot to break down. A lot of great tips in the interview. A few things that stuck out to me were just kind of how much stuff we do, but then there was a lot of little areas where we can just get better, right? Like we do promote multi-sports. We don't practice a ton. Like I feel like we do a lot of things good without having an athletic trainer, but sitting down and being able to talk to one helps us identify ways that we can improve. We're looking at having a pre-participation physical for our schools and potentially our conference. And, just hearing that as one of the first things that we should do to come back, just to make sure that kids are healthy, kids are safe. And, any athletes that are maybe seeing this or listening to this, it's not a bad idea to just get a checkup, make sure everything's fine, make sure that, you are safe when you're competing. Ultimately, that's got to be, a top priority for any athletic director, any coach, is just, okay, are the kids safe? Now we can move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we need to take more time to do that, right? It's always rushed these years. You go from season to season, and you want to start the year as fast as you can as the AD. You want to get the kids moving, playing, but just do a step back. I think that's something that we're going to implement. I really enjoyed listening to Jared, such a man with experience. You can learn a lot from him. All the student athletes watching, he shared some great tips. With this podcast, we talk about educational-based athletics, life skills. You've heard a few times the word carryover in a few other podcasts. Jared mentioned it. Different sports have different carryovers. So playing other sports. If you're a basketball player, playing other sports will only make you better. Doing other things in your life will only make you a better person. So don't focus on one thing. It doesn't bring you to the top. You have to do other things too to become a better athlete and a better person. And for those starting next year, he gave some very valuable tips on how to get back. Stretching, general strength training, and some great tips. So I really want to thank Jared for his time today to share his story, to share his expertise with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of mirrored what a coach of mine in high school would say. He was my wrestling coach, and he would always say, like, whether you're a football player or a track runner or baseball or whatever sport you're in, like, work to be the best baseball player you can be, so you're a better wrestler. Right. Yeah. Be the best football player you can be to be a better wrestler. Like if that's your main, whatever your main sport is, do the best you can in those other sports to become better at your main sport. And I don't think I don't think his focus was on injury prevention and, range of motion, that sort of stuff. I think it was just building the mentality of just always giving your best and being the best at what I'm doing, even if it's not my main thing. But, I think there's a lot of things that can be taken away from trying different things, being involved in different things. And, after talking with Jared, it's really helpful for those kids, especially at the high end level that are phenomenal athletes, maybe looking to go to college or university and play sports. Maybe do a sport that's not your main sport, to give your body a break, to see the game in a different way, to develop a few skills that you don't have. It can be very beneficial for some of our athletes.
Definitely. And I wish we had this information when we were a bit younger, the diet, just the stretching, the physical preparedness. That's so important, especially after the COVID pandemic. So again, we want to thank Jared for being here today with us to share his expertise. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. please subscribe to our channel. Give your reactions in the comments. See what you think about our podcast. How can we improve our podcast? And we hope to see you next time.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.